you know, water and sewer and all of those type of things throughout the county. To me, a CDA puts the burden on the property owner or development owner to tax his own self in order to pay for those amenities. And same way with roads and all those things. So I think it's just, it does give us an opportunity to move a project ahead that is otherwise going to be stalled and probably will not get anywhere, and still be paid for by the people that own the property.
Okay. That's good. Okay.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? Is there a motion to send this to public hearing? Because I think we're going to have a public hearing on it. This would be the third reading would be
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Underwood, that we set a public hearing for December the 4th? Let's do it next year. Is that the date, December the 4th?
We have time to advertise?
Today's the 15th, I would think so. Yeah. Okay, public hearing for December the 4th. Sorry?
Don't you?
We have time.
I mean, even though we have time to advertise, do we really want to do something of that magnitude before the holidays? I guess that's my only question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see that December the 4th or January the 8th is going to make that much difference. I mean, on it. I think we've heard it several times, and we've discussed it for a long time. Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay. All right. You heard the motion. Is this discussion on the motion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion is carried. The public hearing will be held on December the 4th.
Thank you.
Yeah, the new business.
Why are we doing 6?
Yeah, why are we doing 6?
Come back, Gary. Oh.
Sir?
Well, your
What's
agenda
6
item-
for?
That's what came later.
That policy was rolled into the conversation de facto as a part of...
Okay.
And 6.
Excellent. No, we don't want to talk anymore. We don't want to
I've
talk
heard all
We don't want to
we're
talk We don't want to talk.
Number 7, request to add Ladysmith Village Homeowners Association Users Group to the Caroline Alert System. John, how are you this evening?
Good, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I've actually had a chance to review some of the comments that have been addressed regarding this request, and based on the comments that I read, I'd like to actually propose we table this discussion to allow us the opportunity to spend some more time with Mr. Garrett and talk about the issues that you've all addressed, and to see if there's some other options that we can come up with. Because the last thing we want to do is take away some resources from the county and have it be a burden to Mr. Garrett if we were to add a Ladysmith Village text alert system. That's not our intention. Our intention is to look for ways to enhance and increase the safety of the residents at Ladysmith Village, and that's what we want to do. And we actually have spoken with Newland about the possibility of creating our own separate text alert system. And if that's something that we need to look at and exploring further, we're happy to do that. But I'd still like the opportunity to spend some more time with Mr. Garrett and talk about the opportunities and whether or not this is a viable option.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Keep the option open. Thanks.
Ooh, one more. We did 10.
We're going to come back to 10.
Oh, we're coming back to 10.
All right, number 8, discussion of proposed legislation in upcoming General Assembly session to enable Caroline County to levy admissions tax. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Staff put together the memorandum to bring to your attention the potential value of an admissions tax to the county. Early days on this concept yet. We don't have an entire model, for example, of all the potential taxes revenues it could raise, and so forth. But what we are trying to do is bring this to your attention as something that you might want to consider, and if so, direct staff and attorneys to consider it further.
Okay. Comments, questions? Mr. Black?
Mr. Chairman, I have several concerns with this. I don't think that any of us up here would disagree that the county needs is always looking for revenue. I think that's kind of an understatement. My problem is I'm not sure we're trying to get this in for this legislative session. I mean, is that the goal here? I mean, if that's the goal, and what's the deadline? December 15th?
Actually, I don't know exactly what that date is.
I'm sure it's coming up very, very quickly.
Yes.
And to me, this is the first time that we've seen this.
Sure.
This is the first time this year we've seen this. I think if you're going to do something like this, you've got to sit down with the business owners that it'll affect, and you have a serious discussion. I honestly think that putting this on them right now would be. Businesses are struggling. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I don't think that would be fair to them to put this on without them having some sort of input into, input into this decision. I mean, I think it's only fair. I'm sure they're not going to be happy with it, any decision that was made. So I guess those are the key things. And I think if we want to talk about revenue, Mr. Wilson, this is just kind of my thing is. I'd rather see more businesses in Caroline County, and then having. I mean, because if we keep on, if we're saying we're open for business, if we're saying Caroline County is open for business, and say, hey, welcome State Fair or welcome Caroline County Agriculture Fair, now we're going to tax you. That's not putting the welcome mat out. I want to see us have more business, so that way we create more revenue by having more businesses here, than trying to tax the businesses that are already here even more. And to me, that's what I see this is. And additionally, logistically, I'm thinking to myself, the delegates are up for re-election this year, correct? And this would have to be introduced by a delegate, correct? So we would get a delegate to be able to introduce this on a year of a re-election? I mean, I seriously doubt the logistics of that are even possible in that way as well. So I personally don't think this is a smart decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, you have comments, questions?
Well, I guess my concern is there's no good way to raise revenue. But that doesn't change the fact that it takes revenue to supply services. And when I look at a situation like an admissions tax, that's not something I necessarily want to see happen, but I would rather see that happen in lieu of additional real estate tax or personal property. I see it as an avenue to generate revenue without having to expressly put it on the backs of taxpayers where they have no choice. I know that it's not good, but we have to look at expenses. We have to look at cost of services, and we've got to find a way to pay for them. We just got through talking about a radio system. Any revenue that's generated is obviously going into the general fund and be used to supply services or whatever. So whereas I'm not saying that's something I necessarily want to see happen, I'm just saying that I don't know we have a choice. And we look at other localities. Other localities do it, and they are successful in motivating businesses to come as well. And we have the same needs as everyone else. So, I'm not saying that it's something I necessarily want. I'm just saying that we need revenue, and that just might be a source that we can get it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, from my understanding, this is just simply for us having the ability to levy a emissions tax. Doesn't mean that we would on everyone. So all that I've read about taxation simply says that it's always better to give people the option that if you want to take part of the service and there's a tax applied to it rather than to tax the general public. So I think anytime that we can, I mean, we do it with hotels, they collect a certain amount of tax, restaurants, or if you do carry out versus eat in, you pay a tax. You go through the drive-through, you pay an additional tax in some places, so it gives you the option. So certainly we're going to need funds. I can understand what Mr. Black is saying, and I understand his position. We do want to attract businesses to the county, but there is a cost to do business. And I think just the fact that we have it as a ace in the hole is better than saying that we're going to use it blanketly, but it does give us some options. And I think we need options. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the way I see it, and Mr. Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong, we have three main entities that would be affected by this.
Yes, sir.
The state fair, the county fair, and the sports complex.
Actually, I was not thinking of the county fair. I was thinking of Mr. B's.
Mr. B's Bluegrass. Actually, I have that written down. But those four businesses, because the county fair would also be included.
Not necessarily. You can exclude nonprofits.
Is the state fair not a 501c3 also?
Not at this point, I don't believe.
So when they took over, because the county fair that they bought, the naming rights that they bought was a 501c3, correct?
I don't believe they invested themselves into that organization. They are an entirely separate organization.
As I recall, the old state fair was 501c3, but the buyers did not buy the corporation. They just bought the assets and the right to use the name. I don't know whether they're a 501c3 or not.
They're not. They're for profit. They are specifically for profit, and they mentioned that at the grand opening.
Okay. But Mr. B's Bluegrass and the sports complex also fall into that category as well.
They would. Of course, you would then, when you craft your own ordinance based on your ability to levy a tax, you can define your targeted entities how you wish. It's within the board's power. You're not forced to tax a specific category. You can craft your own ordinance.
So we would only tax the state fair?
No, sir. What I'm saying is that you have only, well, I'm only just trying to say that you have the ability to craft your ordinance to focus your taxes as you wish. I'm not saying how that would be or what you would value at that time. But I'm just saying that you have some choices. You're not forced into any kind of specific taxation.
Have you had any discussions with any of these entities at all about doing this?
Yes, sir. I've spoken with Jeff Dillon, president of the State Fair of Virginia. He'd rather us not do this.
So you have spoken to him?
Yes, sir.
Jeff Dillon's name doesn't ring a bell with me. I thought it was a Mark
Lovell.
Lovell.
He is a partner, but the president of the State Fair of Virginia is Jeff Dillon.
He's the Farm Bureau side.
Oh, Farm Bureau side. Okay.
But you're right, Mr. Lovell is not in favor of this proposition either.
He wasn't either.
I'm just, have we talked to the sports complex since they may
I've
fall
tried
into
to,
this?
but they have not returned my communications.
And how about Mr. B's?
No, I have not.
I mean, those are my concerns, that we could potentially impact all of them. And I think those discussions need to take place before we move down the road.
Well, I agree, and that's why we are approaching this as bringing this to your attention. I have to say, staff is no more enthusiastic about issuing new taxes than anyone else is. We are simply bringing this option to your attention, and one of the things we think should happen is that it be studied.
I guess the other thing I'm curious about, do we know what the attendance of any other venues at the state fairground have been, attendance-wise, like the gun show or whatever else they do? Do we know what
We don't have
the
that
numbers of
information.
those?
Again, we don't have that information yet. That's why we think studying it would be a good idea.
Because I think this is marked for action tonight, isn't it? Right. I mean, it's not,
Well,
it doesn't, it says action. It's not-
Action to move forward to the,
He's going to recommend it.
To our
Study
delegate,
it
right.
further.
Okay.
Look at it. The board gives the staff permission to move it.
I'm just making sure, because I always look at those to see what they want done. And I guess, I just feel like there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place before I'm willing to move forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The real reason we're doing this, as we all know, is Virginia's a Dillon Rule state, and if we don't have permission to do something, we have to actually ask the legislature. So basically, this is a formality to ask the legislature, please, please, can we do this? That doesn't necessarily mean we have to do it.
That's absolutely correct.
And as you and I discussed, if the state fair is under new ownership, they're trying to get their feet wet now, even if we got permission, it wouldn't be a good idea to do it the first year, or may not be a good idea to do it the first year. Maybe a good idea to just have this as a card in our pocket later.
That's true.
Of course, nobody wants to have their taxes raised or anything, but I've always been of the opinion that if I can grab money from people going through the county as they're going on their way, I would be happy to do that, because they're driving on our roads and using our facilities. They might as well help pay for it. Now, from what I read, there was 200, excuse me? Oh, from what I read, there was 200 and some thousand people that went to the state fair this year, right? That's 210, something like that?
I think that number is not yet firm. I don't know what that number is exactly. I don't think they've reported a firm number.
Theoretically, that was what was reported, and I understand I shouldn't believe everything I read in the newspaper, but that's what was reported. 270,000 was the number used last year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was audited, I'm sure. There's only 30,000 people in the county. So if everybody in the county went to the fair, 240,000 people from somewhere else went to the fair, and it would be nice for them to help us keep that area nice. Might not be a bad idea to do it. But again, we would just be asking for permission to do this, not necessarily do it. And as Mr. Seeley asked, the county fair is a nonprofit.
Yes, sir.
So in crafting this, we could make it just for-profit type of businesses.
You could, yes, sir.
And the last thing is, Mr. Black, you may not be aware of this, but we had talked about this before the state fair came, when they first came, and we should have had this in place when they came, but, you know, for whatever reason we didn't. We might have asked for permission and they said no or whatever, but I'm a firm believer, let's ask for all the things we can, and then we'll have different options to use later. So that's my opinion. What were you saying?
Yeah. I'll have to agree with Mr. Black on the standpoint that this is not the year to go to the General Assembly and ask for admissions tax. They're up for re-election, and they're just absolutely not going to agree to it. I do believe it's important for us to move ahead and continue to study, continue to look, and to really try to sell what we're trying to accomplish to the people that are going to be impacted and affected. We're going to have to sell this to the General Assembly members. We're going to have to find someone to introduce it in the General Assembly and support it throughout the process. So, yeah, I think it's going to take some work on our part to see this process through. I think if we are able to sell to the sports complex, to the state fair people, and I think we could do this. We could look at making some other changes, whereas we don't give the whole $270,000 back or $300,000, but we say, okay, we'll relieve some of the B-poll tax or something else that they're now being charged if we can trade off a little bit of it and still come out realizing a net gain of substantial amount. I believe that would be to our advantage. And that number, the chances are, is going to grow pretty well every year. The first year the fair was held in Caroline County, I think there were about 220 or 30,000 people. The second year was the most, it was the highest attendance that they'd ever had at a state fair, which was 270-some thousand. So, yeah, I think we need to move forward. I think we need to do it right. I would not be in agreement to go this year and ask the General Assembly members, because we know we're going to get shot down, and they may not take us as serious the next time around. We need to sell it to them and get them on board with what we're trying to do. But I do like the idea of trying to realize some tax revenue from the people that are going through the county, as many of these other localities. Dinwiddie, for instance, I know, excuse me, they have the racetrack there, so they're certainly getting considerably missions tax on that, but also they just attracted an Amazon distribution center. I mean, so they're growing as well, and they have this emissions tax that they give, because it's not impacting those people.
Can I add one thing, Mr. Chairman? And
Yes.
Just one last thing. One last thing. You,
Yes.
myself, Mr. Seeley, and Mr. Underwood were all on the board when the board, during an election year, raised taxes.
Yes. Yes.
I want to know if my delegate in Richmond will support me before he's reelected. I want to know if they're going to support this county and say, we think this is a good idea for you, not whether they're up for election or not. And if they don't want to do it while they're up for election, I want to know that. And I think we should at least see if one of our delegates would push this forward. And then we will know before the election.
Mr. Thomas, I'd always thought you lived in the real world.
I don't.
I've got about 500 acres of oceanfront property in Arizona that I'll be glad to sell you.
As soon as
Because I can
California
tell you-
falls into the ocean, I'll buy it.
I can tell you it is not going to happen.
I just want to know.
You've
Can
got
we just
King's
ask
Dominion.
them?
You've
Can we
got
just
King-
ask them?
I won't vote to ask them. I
Will
won't
anybody
vote to
else,
ask them.
will anybody want to ask to see if one of our delegates, you got a different delegate than I do. No, we got
You
three.
do,
We
yes.
got three. We have three.
Jeff has
one of-
one.
Jeff and I have the same delegate, and I think Reggie. Calvin's
Oh,
different.
no, John Cox is, no, you don't either.
have Margaret.
Oh, you got Margaret,
Brent-
right.
Yeah, he says Margaret Brent.
You got Margaret, you got Margaret. And he's got Bobby. Can we ask one of those three?
I won't vote to ask.
Can we ask
I won't-
staff?
I won't vote to
If
ask.
they, can we ask staff if they're willing to do that?
I think we read in the paper, I didn't get the paper, but somebody told me that
I told
the
you
the paper said they talked to John Cox, and John Cox says, absolutely, no.
He
I'm
said he
cool
was
with-
cool to the idea.
Yeah. I'm not willing to put them, because they have Kings, it is not just necessarily the people that we're going to be impacted. I can tell you, you're going to get a tremendous feedback from Kings Dominion. Hanover County doesn't charge admissions tax. Kings Dominion doesn't have to pay the admissions tax. They are concerned about what's going to happen if we get or admissions tax in Caroline County. I'm not willing to do that at this point.
So
I'm willing to push the pencil, as somebody said, kick the can down the road. I'm willing to kick that can down the road to keep it alive, to keep the process alive, and hopefully we can convince enough people in the General Assembly and convince enough people that's going to be impacted by this admissions tax to agree with us and say, yes, I think it's a good idea, or I'm willing to not
So what you're
oppose
saying,
the idea.
Mr. Chairman?
so what you're saying, wait 1 second. So what you're saying is, the Board of Supervisors had the courage during an election year to actually raise taxes, and we don't think that our representatives in the House of Delegates would have the courage to even consider an option for taxes? I had to raise taxes on my actual constituents. Here, we're asking them to give us an option, and we think, what you're saying is, we think they don't have enough courage to even consider that?
But Mr. Thomas, we at least had public hearings for that. We're sitting here tonight having not talked to any of those businesses individually.
Mr. Wilson
And
has.
asking, well, no. It's not Mr. Wilson's, but you're talking about those of us sitting here raise taxes. We had to talk to our constituents. I think we owe it to the business owners to sit down with them and
We as the
explain
Board
what's
of
going on.
Supervisors.
We as the board. Before you march forward on something that they've just heard from staff or from the newspaper.
So is that what we're going to do next? We're going to have a board meeting with the local businesses?
I think that is one step in the process, that we have a meeting with these people and certainly let them know what we're trying to accomplish. There are going to be many steps. I don't believe it's a one-step process. I think there are many processes. We need the year. If we had a truly, and I think we as a board probably think so, but if we'd have truly wanted this to be approved in this year's General Assembly, we should have started the process last year.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and Mr. Chairman, I concur 100%. I think that we need to sit down, if we're going to try to do this, then you need to talk to the business owners who it will affect and have their input. And you had mentioned something about the idea of maybe lowering a B-poll tax or whatever the case may be, working some sort of deal with them if this is what we want to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, if you get their input on it, we can all, because to me, if you just go ahead with it tonight, even if you try to get something, you're forcing something down their throats without having them any input, and that's where we get negative reaction.
No, we're not forcing it down their throats. We have the ability, just like right now, we have the ability.
They still have the input.
But right now, we have the ability to raise real estate taxes. That's an ability. Not that we're going to do it, but we have the ability.
But we have to do a public hearing.
And we would do a public hearing. Don't you think it's got to go to the House? It's going to be there in December. Between now and then, we're not going to have any conversations with our representatives?
Thanksgiving's next week. We've canceled our meeting after that. We have the 4th of
We
December,
meet
and
the
you're in
4th.
Christmas. You're getting everybody together and trying to
They're not
hammer
in
this
Richmond now?
out.
They're not in Richmond. They were just here Tuesday. We were out of town. Most of us were out of town. John Cox, Lieutenant Governor, they were. Right. Somebody could have talked to them then. You didn't talk to them then, did you?
It did
Yes,
not.
sir.
Okay. All right.
All I'm saying is,
We need to work on
we
it.
need to work on it, we need to move it ahead. It's a fine idea, Mr. Wilson, and we need to cultivate that idea, and hopefully it'll happen. But trying to force it into this year's agenda, legislative
We're
agenda.
going
is
to talk
not
to them
gonna
about
work.
it, though? We're going to at least talk about it during the year.
Oh, listen,
Talk to them.
I am not opposed to the admissions tax. We talked about it early on, just as though I was not opposed to the fuel tax increase.
I knew you were going to work that in.
You brought that up and said, no, I'm not going to support that. And it was proven then that over 80% of the revenue generated from that tax was coming from outside of the county.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, would you stick to the subject?
So, all right, if we want to talk about one thing, let's talk about the other. Let's compare them.
All right.
I think you have direction, Mr. Wilson, as
Yes,
to
sir.
what
Thank
the
you.
board wants to do. And the board does want to sit down and talk with the business owners that are going to be impacted.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you for
Mr.
that.
Seeley?
if
helpful
I
discussion.
could
Thank you for that healthy discussion.
go back under new business and do a reconsideration on agenda item number 10 for the first reading of the ordinance of the text amendment TX-08 through TX-15. I'd like to make a motion to resend that motion and do a reconsider.
Okay. Is there a second to that, to Mr. Seeley's motion? Mr. Black?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Black, that we rescind the motion early in the meeting concerning the first reading of zoning ordinance text amendment. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Division in the House. Mr. Black, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Could I ask him why before I vote?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can go to this. In talking with Mr. Fincham, this text amendment is actually aimed at resolving one particular problem in Lake Landor, which they've run into, and they are in the middle of a building permit process. And so what this ordinance was trying to do was to resolve all those issues with all the different zonings that actually have POAs and HOAs, and how to resolve their ability to build a structure for a admin office. And in discussions with Mr. Fincham during the break, one of the concerns I had was actually with a zoning that was not exactly associated with what that particular homeowners association is dealing with. What I'd like to do is reconsider this ordinance for only the R1 permitted SE zoning, and then come back and revisit this for all the other zonings and the zoning we need to add, which would resolve Lake Landor's problems and would be an incremental step in the actual approval process for this text amendment.
So in other words, the one that's in Mr. Black's district would not be impacted?
It would only
He's the
impact
only one
it.
impacted.
This would be the only impact, would be R1 because the rest are rural preservation.
Or him and, it wouldn't do Belmont?
No, it's
But
Lake Landor.
But it would do like Landor and
And Lake Caroline would be
Caroline.
involved.
And Ladysmith Village.
And probably Ladysmith Village.
Caroline Ponds is a HOA.
But they're not R1, are they, Mr.? They're not R1. We've looked at this pretty closely during the break. He's down here.
Caroline Pines, Mr. Finley?
No, sir.
Is that rural?
Caroline Pines is rural preservation. It would affect,
Only the
So they wouldn't be
R1.
affected.
your major R1 developments are Lake Caroline, Lake Landor, Bridal Woods. You have a fewer,
Bridlewood?
Bridal Woods subdivision is zoned R1.
And they'll throw something up tomorrow.
No, they kind of go through the permit process.
About,
And Belmont was planned mixed use. Belmont was, it wasn't planned mixed use.
planned residential development, PRD.
Which is
PRD.
not covered. I would
Right,
just
that
do
was the one that was
R1.
missing, period.
Right.
Caroline Pines
Oh.
is rural preservation.
So it wouldn't be affected.
You know, the only P-MUD we have is J Mountain.
Those three, Landor, Caroline, and Bridlewood. That would require, this change would require them to,
Do nothing. This change means they do nothing.
It would not require them to do anything.
Right, they'd be by right.
It would allow them within those communities, if they wanted to build a POA office or an HOA office, it would allow them to do that within those communities, or to replace an existing structure and relocate it somewhere else.
Which is what we were doing anyways.
And
all with the exception of Bridlewood, already has a POA office. Now, Lake Landor evidently was wanting to build a new facility because
Right.
theirs is getting too small, I guess. or
Right,
whatever.
and it's in terrible shape.
Right. And Lake Caroline, I think that, I'm not sure, but eventually I guess they're going to want to move and expand theirs as well. Bridlewood doesn't even have a POA or HOA that I know of.
correct. You'd have to have an HOA or a POA in order to qualify for that facility.
Can we, is there any other wording that,
Can we make a vote to go forward, to at least talk about this, because we're in discussion, I guess, if we're going to make changes? We were in the middle of a vote. You were going, roll call vote, so can we finish so we can go to discussion?
yeah,
Well,
okay.
You might want to finish the discussion.
Okay, I'm just
Just
making
to
sure we're
make
not trying to make a
sure
decision. Okay.
Clarify where you want to vote.
I'm just trying to figure out, because, again, the two that already have it, I'm fine with that. It's the third one that I don't know, that's the unknown, and I don't know what will happen in there. Is there some way we can put a number of homes into it as far as a POA or HOA?
Yes, sir.
I know the Bridlewood is limited to 97 homes or to 40, I'm not sure.
I think they have the zoning that actually allows them upwards of 300. They still have an undeveloped section to the rear of that property.
So we can put anything over 500 homes, and that takes care of the existing two developments that are in place?
Yes, sir. We could add a qualifier such as that creates a minimum number of units.
Yeah. I like that, then I think it helps you control a little better.
We could do that.
Continuing the motion to reconsider roll call. And Mr. Black has to start over with the roll call.
Okay? Mr. Black, you vote aye.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
On the motion to
Aye.
reconsider.
Mr. Underwood?
Nay.
Mr. Seeley?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
I'm going to vote aye.
And I vote aye as well. But you're going to put, motions approved?
The motion to reconsider.
Right. Okay, great. Okay, now, is there a motion to
And I've,
do,
And
what do we
I've-
need to do as far as a motion? What kind of motion you want
Just your motion is just.
out there now, Michael? Right.
And you have some.
you want a
residency
number of
language.
homes
You want a number of homes language in this motion.
to R1, we can do that.
Hurry up.
Mr. Fincham, if I made a motion to actually go to public hearing for POA, HOA offices within the R1 district with a home count of 50 or greater, that such facilities would allow such uses in common areas, would that be sufficient? Or do you want to tell me what you need to hear?
Go to public hearing on the definition of community administrative office and public hearing to allow that use in the R1 district. And we would amend the definition of community administrative office to include a minimum number of dwelling units, which I'm hearing is 500, which would address your two largest R1 communities in the county.
Yeah, that minimum number, already built.
Okay.
I figured on that. I think that covers all of the issues, and then we could go to public hearing with that on the 4th.
Yes, sir.
That is my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sealer, seconded by Mr. Black. And you heard the motion. Is there discussion on the motion?
And Mr. Fincham, you are going to take the rest of the process you gave us today and bring it back to us December 4th, or?
We can discuss that as
January?
unfinished business that night as well.
Okay, you're going to be ready then?
Now, what I'm hearing from you is you would like to include PRD.
Yes.
That would require,
Another public hearing.
Back to the planning commission.
yes.
Okay,
So
then there's no rush.
we can hold off until we take care of that
Okay.
and get all of the rest of the regulations together.
Just wanted to make sure I understood the process totally. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Further discussion of the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Information on calendar items, Mr. Cully?
We would, we'd like the board to consider
Okay.
canceling its 27th, November 27th meeting due to the fact that we moved the December 11th meeting to December 4th, and really only leaves a week in between. We don't have any public hearings scheduled for the 27th at this time, so we think we can handle all the business on the 4th. It's a fair amount of turnaround of board package to do one right after the other.
Sounds good to me. Board having a problem with canceling the, is there a motion to cancel the November 27th meeting?
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Sealer, seconded by Mr. Taylor, that we cancel the 27th meeting. With protest of Mr. Thomas, but we're going to move ahead. All discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion is carried.
Send him a McDonald's coupon, would you?
We'll open the place up.
Oh, thank you. That's okay.
Anything else?
We do need a closed session on personnel and consultation with legal counsel.
All right.
Closing board comments?
Yep, closing board comments. Mr. Black?
Yeah, I just have two. I will be holding constituent meetings on Thursday, November 29th at Rehoboth United Methodist Church in Charlesburg at 7 p.m. And I will also be holding a second constituent meeting about 3 weeks later, December the 17th, Monday, December 17th, inside the Lake Landor Clubhouse at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Taylor?
Yes, I just have a couple of. I would just like to say, in response to the concern tonight for the closing of the rescue squad in Dawn, just for my own personal benefit, I supported that move, and I did it because there were issues going on there that were dangerous, to say the least, and the county, as well as the people affected by the area, were just in danger of something happening that could really create some serious problems. And this board had tried to work with that situation. So the only way we could, or that we believed that we could end that situation, was to take the action that we took. And so I'm just saying I made that vote because I felt it was in the best interest of everybody. And so nothing personal against Dawn or any other citizen, but sometimes we have to do things or take drastic steps in order to correct problems. And hopefully we will do that, and it will be reopened. The other thing I will say in regards to the admission tax, I've been on this board 17 years. I have not seen people come in here and line up in support of a tax increase. Nobody has. And if you think that's going to happen with this, I don't believe so either. It's just a situation where we have to generate funds, and it's tough, it's difficult, but we do what we have to do. And I think it's the same thing with this situation. I'm sure that the business owners probably would rather not have an admission tax, but I'm sure the business owners also want to have law enforcement when they need it, and fire and rescue, and good schools, and all the other things that revenue brings. And it's sometimes necessary, and unfortunately, we're the ones who have to make that decision. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It was good to see some of the constituents come out. Sometimes you have to vote based on what is right for the county. This was a decision that's right for the county, that really put the county in a bad position in terms of liability. And I'm here to do what's best for the county, and sometimes that means constituents sometimes have to allow us to do our job to make sure we're protecting them in the district that I represent as well as the county. So it wasn't something that we took lightly, but as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we'll do whatever is necessary to get the rescue squad back on its feet and taking care of the citizens in Reedy Church. But at this time, it is not capable of meeting the needs of the citizenry there without putting the county at risk. So once we make certain changes, then I believe we can come back bigger and stronger, but at the present time. So it's just unfortunate, but it's one of those things.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Underwood.
thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Chairman, I have one comment. I have a constituent meeting Monday the 19th, and it is to celebrate the hopefully turn on of the cell tower in Sparta, which I think will help all involved, the citizens and the county, and now that we have a site that we don't have to build to maintain for communication. So it's a celebration basically of that as well as a constituent meeting. That's all I've got.
King and Queen County people appreciate it too. 'Cause,
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
this weekend.
Exactly.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just forgot to mention December 11th is my community meeting here in the community center, and I want to thank Mrs. Hall for setting up that, and it's at 6 o'clock? 6:30? Thank you, 6:30. She tells me where to be and when to be, so. 6:30, December 11th, right here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have one constituent meeting that's been scheduled, and that's December the 3rd at the Ladysmith Fire Department conference room. Ms. Hall is trying to schedule the Lake Caroline as well as the Ladysmith Village constituent meeting. This past
Okay, you read this. I
week
can't stay.
at the VACO conference, there was a lot of discussion. In fact, it got pretty heated at times in the committee meeting about the tolls on I-95. Now, it was mentioned at the meeting, and maybe I have not seen it because, to be honest, I don't buy the paper, so I don't know. But it was mentioned that there's going to be a public hearing in Caroline County on December 13th by the Highway Department to talk about this. They gave various dates that they were going to be in Spotsylvania or in Hanover County, I believe in Spotsylvania County, as well as in Sussex County. And Caroline County was mentioned, and I think it was December 13th. Could staff check into that to see if there's any validity to that? Because I think that needs to be out there. I think tolls is going to be a battle. I really do. Because in the committee meeting, The people that were in Northern Virginia are saying we've been paying tolls for years, and so why shouldn't you pay tolls in the area that you live in? But as I tried to tell them, their tolls is for new roads, where these tolls is strictly to maintain what is here already. And they'll take the money that's now being used to maintain the road 95 between Northern Virginia and the North Carolina line and move that somewhere else into the state. So it's to me, and as I said, it's penalizing the counties and the localities on this 95 corridor from that standpoint. It's putting us at a disadvantage as far as economic impact it's going to be, and as well as the monetary impact on the people that drive back and forth to Richmond, Northern Virginia, or to Washington or to Fredericksburg to work that live, say, in Caroline County, and if the tolls are put in Caroline County. And so, again, I'd like for us to check that information out, and I think we need to really follow this very closely. It's not going to do in the General Assembly. However, Senator John Watkins is proposing some legislation in this General Assembly that will address funding for transportation. And I think we need to follow that. Whoever's going to do that, I think we need to follow that quite closely. And if it's something that we feel like has benefits us, we need to come out early on and support it. One of the other things is with the Region 7, which is comprised of Caroline, Spotsylvania, Hanover, Caroline, Spotsylvania, King George, Stafford, Orange, Louisa, Fauquier, not loud anymore, Fauquier, Culpeper. That's about 9 different counties. We have included that into the Region 7 legislative package that we are opposing tolls at this point unless it is at least run through the General Assembly. At this point, they have no control over what happens. And so I think we need to follow that pretty closely. And any package that we send to Richmond, that also needs to be included. Those are my comments. Mr. Seeley, you have a motion over there to make?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board convene in closed meeting pursuant to the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff exempt by Section 2.2-311A7 of the Code of Virginia and the public's contract exemption 2.2-3711A29 of the Code to discuss legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel involving their procurement of services and equipment related to the county's conversion to the narrowbanding radio system and the negotiation of a contract for such services and equipment, whereas discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position of Caroline County, and also pursuant to the personnel exemption section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code to discuss disciplinary action taken against an employee of the utility department.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Seeley and seconded by Mr. Underwood. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. The board will take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll enter into closed session.
Come out of closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that we come out of closed meeting. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Mr. Black, do you certify that we only discussed in closed session items that we said we were going in to discuss?
I so certify.
Mr. Taylor?
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
I so certify.
Mr. Thomas?
I so certify.
And I so certify as well. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Taylor. Discussion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried, and
No meeting till December 4th?
that's correct.